becoming pop stars, becoming upstart.
What does it really take to stand out in a market defined by lifestyle, fast growth, and constant change?
Meet the agent.
Welcome to Meet the Agent podcast. I'm Wendy Claire.
She's the agent.
Today,
Bring the color.
meet Mitch Walkerden of Dimosons, an agent who's making waves on the South Coast.
Coming big time.
Hi Mitch, thank you so much for joining us.
No worries, Wendy. Thank you very much for having me.
All the way from the South Coast. So let's dive in. I've literally just got to say hello and see you on Instagram in the last few days, and I loved what I saw. So I don't know much about you beyond that. Tell me a little bit about what you love doing when you're not doing real estate.
I'm a father of two and got my lovely wife, Lauren.
Oh, that's fantastic. What kind of music star or song then do you think most fits Mitch?
I think it probably is a couple. I like Frank Sinatra's My Way.
Meet the agent, Mr. Face of the Firm, from open plan.
Not
to
in
plan.
like it's my way or the highway kind of thing. It's more of a, I like to do things in a certain way, and I feel like that song is, it kind of appeals to me and says something about me. And I try to hustle as much as I possibly can. So and in real estate, because it's such a like highs and lows, right? It's a roller coaster, and sometimes you question yourself. So like, don't stop believing.
Interesting.
Is another one. You have the same sort of questions when you're a parent and you think, God, am I doing the right thing with these kids here? Or they're driving me nuts. Like, so there are probably a couple of songs that I think are relevant to me in my life.
So they're kind of anthems in a sense for your attitude, really, rather than necessarily your personality. Could be both, but they're really almost like mottos that really drive you.
Yeah, and in terms of personality, I'm not a comedian, and my friends would tear me to shreds if I said that I was. But I think I have the ability to be funny from time to time, and my wife quite likes my sense of humour. So like anything by kind of Weird Al, like Yankovic.
Okay.
Yeah.
I must say, you did
that-
win me over with the video that I saw where you were really like, oh my God, how do we do this, new agent video thing? And look, a lot of agents sort of try that sort of skit, but it just seemed very genuine, and it was very funny. It was very likable, and I felt a little like I genuinely got to know you. And that's partly why I sort of, called you up for this because I thought so many agents must really relate to that. Like I don't like putting my face, out there on social media. I don't know if I need to, but it's tough. And you really, came across with, I suppose, your heart in your sleeve. Now you say it rather than a poker face. And it was very funny. So
Thank you. It's a fine line, right? I don't want to. I guess a vendor is never going to sell with someone that's a clown, but you also want to show your personality. And if you are a bit of a comedian, then try to show that, but not go to that next little step that is being a clown.
right.
That's a fine line to tread. So I'm actively.
They want to know, right?
Yeah.
You're serious about their property, about the deal. You're not going to come
Absolutely.
around on the deal.
Yeah, but a vendor is also never going to sell with you if they don't like you. So if I'm able to put out there, hey, this is me, like this is my authentic self. I like to have a laugh. I like to have fun. Like selling a house or buying a house is stressful enough. Like let's try and have some fun while doing it. I'm obviously going to be as like serious and professional as I possibly can be, but let's have some fun with it in the process. Like,
So You were writing to me as well, something that have piqued my interest. You're a selling agent, but you were writing to me very much about your attitude and thinking about buyers. And at first, when I read your messages, I thought, oh, okay, he's a buyer's agent. And then I realized, no, you're definitely representing the seller's interests, but you had a very interesting attitude to me about your approach to buyers.
First and foremost, I'm always trying to get the highest possible price for my vendor. Like, I definitely want to preface by saying that. But I'm of the opinion that just because that's the ultimate goal, that you can't do two things at once. I think you definitely can. And those two things at once, achieving the highest possible price for the vendor and helping the buyer. Now, I'm not obviously not helping the buyer purchase the property for less, but anyone that, like me, who purchased the property before I got into real estate, buying is so daunting. We, as agents and this industry, it's so lingo heavy, and the process behind it so foreign that a lot of buyers are walking into properties going, okay, I like this property. How do I even submit an offer? What do I do? So one of the things that I get the most gratification from is helping buyers so that they, and taking the time so that they understand each process and each step. And a buyer that is understanding of the processes and what to expect next feels more comfortable, and more comfortable means that they're more likely to submit an offer. So I also try and operate with pretty much 100% transparency across the board. All of these things combined means that buyers inherently start to trust me. And by trusting me, they might reveal a little bit more than they probably should for the negotiation process. So a lot of that can be, I actually know what their maximum budget is, which particularly helps when there's more than one buyer, and I'm trying to leverage the buyers in like a back of house auction essentially, and driving the price up for my vendor. But what I've been able to do as a consequence of getting to know a lot of these buyers by helping them is they haven't found something for 6 months, and I walk into a listing presentation and I walk in and, oh my God, this is the property for them. I know that they are going to buy this. So I have additional confidence that when I say to my vendor, I think I know who is going to buy this property, or I have multiple buyers that are going to want to buy this property. Let's do 2 weeks of off market. Let's bring these buyers through. Let's try and get offers from these buyers, or get to a point where you're either happy to accept, or if we don't get what you're happy to accept, we don't think we've met the market, then we can go to market and buyers ask us, has there been any offers? Yes, there has. This is where the offers are, and this is where expectation is. So I essentially get two bites of the cherry. I get to try off market and set a high bar for my vendor and say, if you're going to take this property off the market, this is the number. Like, it needs to be here, and it's right at an absolute premium. And I don't feel conflicted because I know these buyers and I know them well, and I know what their budgets are. And they get the house that they want in the location that they want. So I'm able to do two things at once, and that has the added benefit of, in the future, these buyers have been so happy with me, they'll tell their friends. And when they do need to sell, or their friends need to sell, they'll recommend me, or they'll never sell for anybody else. So it's also, I feel it helps me right now in the immediate, and it will also help me in the future. So I'm playing the long game as well.
Yeah, that seems very smart. Right. And I see what you mean. I know when I feel comfortable with someone, I tend to talk a bit more, and then you reveal a bit more. So getting people talking and feeling comfortable, knowledge is power. It's actually very smart. I like that. I'm interested to hear a little bit about any particular examples.
Well, a direct example of kind of what I just talked about was a property in Port Kembla just before Christmas. It was funny, there's a shop down the road from our office, and the chef in there I've got to know quite well, and I know that he was a tenant in Port Kembla, and he told me that his vendor was going to not renewing his lease and was going to sell. Port Kembla being the suburb that I focus on the most, I was like, all right, Charlie, have you got his number? And he's like, I don't. And he's like, but I know he's going to start doing work to the property. So I was casing that place, just waiting for a car to
Interesting.
door knocking either side of the street and just hoping that when I came back around there was a car in the driveway. Eventually saw there was a car in the driveway, knocked on the door, and had a chat with him and mentioned that I knew Charlie. It was very
I love
hesitant and
this. I know
skeptical
Charlie.
of him.
Go on.
Yeah, very hesitant and skeptical. I showed him a few things, and I was like, look, I feel like I'm more than qualified to give you an accurate guide of the property for you. I'm already here. What's the worst that can happen? And he was like, oh, okay, fine. Takes me in, and I could feel that I was never going to get a listing. I could just feel it. It was just oozing. That was just coming off him. And after going through the house with him, I knew I had two buyers. And I pretty much told him as much. And I was like, what do you think what do you think it's worth? And he told me 1.35 to 1.4, but he was going to do a little bit of work to the property. And then if he did that work, 1.4 to 1.45, which I thought was pretty bang on the money. And I knew these other two buyers had budgets at 1.4. And I said, look, if you give me a week, just give me a week, I'll go to these two buyers. If we don't get a number that you're happy with, then we'll do the work over the Christmas period, and then we go to market next year. And he was like, I'm in I was like, look, I'm that confident. Give me an agency agreement of a week, just a week. That's all. And he was like, and I'm like, what do you got to lose? It's not going to cost you any money. You're going to sell it anyway. Go get the contract. He's like, okay, and I agreed to it. Within 6 days, I'd had brought both of those buyers to 1.395 and 1.4. And the buyer that got it, I can say that I know I'm going to be friends with this couple in the future, and they've got their dream house. They're so happy, and the vendor was ecstatic. Not only did he not have to do the work to the property, he got the absolute premium for the house in its condition. So that's probably like a recent example.
That's a great example. Yeah.
At the other end,
and you weren't just taking away the stress for the buyers as well, but also for the seller. I mean, that ability to have a quick kind of trouble-free sale must be a very good draw for someone, I can imagine.
Yeah, because that's, as any agent will tell you, that's not always the case. There are lots that go well and truly the other way. I had one, a little 2-bedroom brick old housing commission house in Berkeley, and there was a lot of stuff there. The owner had passed away, and the kids were selling it. He had a lot of stuff in the house, a lot of stuff in the garage, and there was a small space underneath the house on the subfloor that had some stuff there. And we got it quoted. I think it was $4,500 to remove everything, which I thought was pretty reasonable. I arranged this for them because they were all based interstate. And the removalist called me later in the week and he said, remember that stuff underneath the house? And I was like, yep. He's like, there's more. I'm like, how much more? He goes, we don't know. We just keep pulling stuff out and it just keeps going. And turns out what had happened is the guy had filled the subfloor of the house from dirt to floorboards. And then once it was full, had bricked it in. Because there was nobody living in the house, our buyer that we had wanted a really quick settlement and could do it in paying cash. And we were like, right, we've got to do settlements only in like a few days. We thought we had way more time than this. And it was just anyone, and like I was underneath the house pulling stuff out, because I'm like, this probably isn't going to settle in time if we don't get this sorted. And what
was under there? Like it was filled just with rubble, or are you talking about a massive hoard of stuff being used for storage?
53 car tires, 2 car engines, 3 motorbikes, like a whole manner of building materials. Like you picked something and it was under there.
Oh no.
It was unbelievable. And the total cost of removing everything ballooned from $4,500 to $18,000.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And we were really, really thankful that I was able, because my vendors didn't have the money for it. So I was able to negotiate the release of the deposit in order to pay to get it done. So that was wild. They're the two that jumped to my mind immediately. There are definitely others, but
absolutely.
yeah, those two.
Wow. Gosh, yeah, I'm starting to see a pattern here that yes, storage and people kind of leaving things and hoarding things is a bit of an issue that comes up. I ran into someone I know here in the Central Coast and mentioned, something about, doing real estate podcasts and things. And he told me that when he moved in to their place, found all this police sort of taped around the bottom of the basement, and they were really worried there'd been like a body or something.
Yeah.
So they had a friend or someone they knew in the police force, so they had this extensive back channel investigating to just make sure there was no very irky situation that they had just moved into, but it must have been a little bit creepy.
I can
Oh,
imagine.
dear me.
There's one story that I've heard from. It was through another person I know in real estate. They had the pre-settlement inspection. It was like say on a Wednesday, and the house had a kid's play equipment concreted into the backyard. Pre-settlement was on the Wednesday, property settled on the Friday. People went and picked up the keys to go into the property. And in the 2 days since the pre-settlement inspection, the owners had gone back to the property, dug out the kids' play equipment and taken it with them. And the buyers basically sued them, and they won.
And it had been concreted in, so they were really desperate for that equipment.
Concreted into the ground. And I think I would have preferred to pay for a new one than remove a play equipment that was concreted into the ground.
I'm imagining a 6-year-old having a tantrum that, no, I must have that rocking chair.
Yeah.
That and nothing else, Mummy. Gosh, wow. Interesting. Well, I'm glad you didn't have that situation as well. So
Me too, trust me.
yeah, being in Port Kembla, what kind of market do you have there? I mean, is it mainly families? I mean, what is really interesting and unique and special about Port Kembla for those of us like me who had to, I confess, just check where it was on the map because it sounded familiar. But
no, you wouldn't be the only one. For people that like listening, Port Kembla is located about sort of an hour and 45 minutes, 2 hours from south of Sydney on the coast, just south of Wollongong. It's a more complex answer, your question, because we're very much a suburb that's in transition. Historically, Port Kembla was settled by people from the Northern Mediterranean, so like large, swaths of ethnic families that settled here and got jobs at the steelworks, which is based in Port Kembla. And it was predominantly Macedonians, Italians, Serbians, Croatians, all kind of in this pocket here. And once Port Kembla sort of fell into a state of, it wasn't an area that people particularly wanted to live in. Like people weren't jumping at the bit to buy and live in Port Kembla. It had quite a poor reputation and stigma to it. Plus, there was pollution associated with the steelworks and the copper smelter that was here.
Right, that'll do it, yeah.
So 10 years ago, the smelter came down and there were reparations that needed to be paid to people, and the smelting company needed to basically rectify some of the pollution that was left in the area. And then the real catalyst was COVID, where people decided, okay, I can work from home. I want to get out of Sydney. Where's affordable?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
on the coast. Now, northern suburbs of Wollongong and southern suburbs of Wollongong, there's a big disparity in price. And so people were kind of going, I want to be as north as possible and close to Sydney as possible, but buy as cheap as I can. And Port Kembla was at the crossroads of those two. And from then on, it's been families, and the affordability in this suburb has been the catalyst for a lot of new families and gentrification that's starting to happen as these older generation of families either pass away or they move into care, things like that. And within the last 3 years, there's been a huge change in Port Kembla there. We're now 8 years into a 25-year rejuvenation plan with Wollongong Council. And we've got, like, I don't know if I'm biased, but I think Port Kembla, I've travelled the entire
You're allowed to be
coastline of the
biased.
country.
Yeah.
I'll pick Port Kembla at the top of the list for the best beaches around Australia. It is fantastic. It is nice. It is flat. There is a big headland that protects people from the nor'easterly wind if it gets up during the summer. There's a pool there that's free for kids. It's also free for adults, I should say, as well. It's never that busy. You can always park within a couple hundred metres of the beach. Like, try and park within a couple hundred beaches at Cronulla or something like that during the summer period. You've got better luck parking at Woolooware or Caringbah. Down here, it's still quiet. And what we're saying, this is such an intricate area with property. There was a property listed for $12 million in probably the premier position in Port Kembla. It didn't sell. That was very optimistic. But they had offers of $9 million, and I've heard whispers there was offers above 10. By comparison, you can also buy for roughly $750,000 in Port Kembla as well. And that's for a 3-bedroom house. So there's huge difference.
Freestanding house, not a
freestanding house.
A villa. Or wow.
Yeah. There is a huge gap between the top and the bottom of the market in Port Kembla. So there's the majority of who's buying here are first-home buyers or people that are upsizing from their first home. They're the two main buyers. A lot of those buyers are coming from Wollongong or Sydney, and specifically Sydney's inner west. And why Sydney's inner west? If you drive down the main street of Port Kembla, Wentworth Street, having lived in Newtown and Leichhardt in Sydney, it feels like you're in Sydney's inner west. There is a coffee culture. There is a art scene. There is a music scene. There's a top tier cocktail bar and restaurant in a tiny little suburb by the beach called the Iron Yampi. They do, I'm ex-hospitality.
It's a little bit hip.
Yeah, it is.
Great.
Very much so. And people and bands come from a long way away to play here and listen to music here. I mean, to give you an example, a suburb that isn't gentrifying doesn't have 3 Pilates studios in the one street. And the coffee culture here is also great. So being from having lived in Sydney's in the west, I'm a bona fide coffee snob, and the coffee's great.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very happy about that. But what it's got here as well is a lot of Port Kembla, as it's quite hilly, large portions of the suburb have either ocean views or views over Lake Illawarra. So a view like that in Sydney is unbelievably expensive. Here it's still relatively affordable. But all of these things have led to, 3 weeks ago, Port Kembla was announced by realestate.com as being the most in-demand regional suburb in New South Wales. We've seen our properties online have a significant boost in the number of inquiries as a consequence of that. And then the preceding days after that was announced by REA, influencers or investors online have been talking about Port Kembla and then particularly the north end of Lake Illawarra, which I would say is my core suburbs. And those properties are now going bananas as well. There is a definite... the affordability for those areas compared to Port Kembla is much better. Your bang for your buck is definitely better too. And these suburbs are also in stages of gentrification, and they're probably between 5 and 10 years sort of behind Port Kembla in terms of the cycle that these properties are going through, all these areas. So it's great. I'm acutely aware of how lucky I am to be working in an area that is such in demand.
Yeah, look, I've been for some years now since COVID. I moved to the coast, pretty committed coastie, but I have to say it doesn't have a hip vibe up here. It is, as people say, a little bit sleepy. It's a little mostly the kind of fish and chip shop sort of vibe in your minor Edelong's getting a little bit more interesting and a little bit more gentrified and cool, but it's happening. But that does interest me a lot, what you're
Yeah.
talking about. You've actually got me tempted because as I said to Jackson in our previous episode about the Central Coast, and people up here will admit, you do get both types. You get a very super friendly kind of, country hospitality friendliness. And then there's a very rough edge up here in some pockets too, which unfortunately I've experienced. In fact, I've been off the podcast last week because I've had to get an apprehended violence order in court about a neighbor, as well as being under the weather, etc. Probably because of that. So, Port Kembla, what you're talking about right now, I'm thinking, I might come down next weekend. That kind of Newtown feel is very appealing to a younger generation. Are you seeing that kind of rougher crowd moving on or still there? Does that kind of ring any
Yeah.
bells
So
for you or different
yeah.
scenes?
So I mean, that sort of speaks true to down here as well, in that there is elements of that still around,
Yeah.
but it is less and less. Like they're instant. I mean, any area is going to have some form of crime rate.
Yeah.
But the
And the
north end of
comparable price
mm,
value range of the Sydney's West, not talking the inner West, definitely has a reputation for the rough crowd too. So it
yeah,
shouldn't necessarily put you off, but to be aware, because sometimes people can sing the praises of regional, and
oh,
absolutely, but
absolutely,
I
yeah,
try to be real as you do. But yeah, it's definitely on the move, it sounds like. I
yeah.
interrupted you.
That
Sorry, go on.
no, there is still that stigma to areas sort of in and surrounding Port Kembla, and in some cases rightly so. But there are the housing commission that is particularly dotted around, say, like suburb like Berkeley. What seems to be the government's policy at the moment is that once the principal tenant either passes away or moves into care, then that property is being sold. So like Domino's, each one of those that is sold privately and to a young family then coming in and renovating it, it's just that suburb is starting to go. So the way I describe the north end of the lake, and it's nowhere near as bad as this example, but for you people from Sydney, imagine what Redfern was 15, 20 years ago. It wasn't a place you particularly wanted to walk down during the day, let alone at night. And now it is an incredibly expensive part of Sydney. For your Sydney people, again, the closest geographical comparison that I can make for what is the north end of Lake Illawarra is Narrabeen and Elanora Heights. That is what it is like. The north end of the lake is up nice and high, has views across the lake, like Elanora Heights has views across to Narrabeen and to the ocean. That's what it's like here, and the ocean part there is what Port Kembla is like. It is very, very similar geographically.
Yeah. And for our new US listeners who are now starting to tune in, hooray, thinking of a bit more like, the Queens of New York, or Soho used to be, a bit of a seedy place. And now certainly it's one of the coolest. How a place can really change is very interesting and can happen quite quickly, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Like this, particularly Port Kembla, in the last 3 years, that change has been drastic. It's been driven by multiple people that have got kind of aligned goals in turning this suburb back into a desirable place to live and a great place to raise your family. And it is well and truly on its way.
I'm just thinking aloud too. It's interesting up in this north of Sydney area, we do have, and it's been going on for ages, this idea of the fast train to Newcastle happening. And that in some ways absolutely can be a plus for the region, but you can also see the potential that in the near future, it's going to get busy and be just like an outer suburb of Sydney and almost lose that kind of coastal charm if it becomes a Sydney commuter area. So you're not dealing with that whole fast train issue, which is going to give it a little bit of a different dynamic, isn't it? It perhaps keeps it a little bit more coastal and perhaps protects it a little more.
Yeah, I mean, if there is going to be a fast
Sorry,
train,
1 second. Coco, haircut. That did it. She's Go on.
If there is going to be a fast train to Newcastle, there would be, I'm almost certain there'll be thoughts about a fast train to Wollongong.
Okay.
Because we are similarly placed either side of Sydney and major regional towns. I wouldn't be surprised if Newcastle was to get one, that Wollongong was to get one too. However, the cost associated with it, you're right in that it would make both areas busier because the trip to Sydney would be significantly shorter in terms of time. But that is, I imagine building something like that, that's a decade plus in the future. So, and I think they've been talking about doing something like that for 50 years. That might be an exaggeration, but it's been a long time.
That's what I've been hearing. It's almost like a kind of myth. It's become up here. People like Jackson kind of laugh and go, oh yes, the like the suburban myth of the train, the fast train. But right up there with the panther that is living in the Blue Mountains. They got left by your US listeners when they were over here during World War II. Yeah, and when I grew up doing trips from Canberra, where I went to school, to Sydney, I always, thought there was a Loch Ness monster in Lake Burley Griffin, and I was told that. And I was on the bus to Sydney once, and a Scottishman behind me said, "Oh, lass, I hope you don't mind. I tell you, there's no water in or something like Burley Griffin."
Yeah,
so it was kind of a funny moment, but yeah. Anyways, do you think you're still going to be in real estate in 10 years?
I do. I feel like I've definitely found my calling.
That's nice.
It has all the things that I enjoyed about hospitality in a different career, and a career that doesn't mean that I work until 6 a.m., which is nice. And I get to actually see my family every single day instead of leaving when they get home. So that's great. And I'm very passionate about making my vendors happy and making buyers happy as well. I love what I do, and I love this area. Port Kembla is stuck with me as an agent for as long as they'll have me.
So wonderful to hear.
To any new agents that might be listening, they talk about getting on the phone as often as you can and making connections. Like, that is 100% true. Be yourself, be authentic, and build a pipeline that way. And if people like you, they will sell with you. Just be your authentic self. Prospecting is something that I'm not particularly good at, but I'm good at building relationships, and that is equally, if not more important, because building relationships will sustain you in the future. While making phone calls, like, you can make an infinite number of phone calls, but it's the connection that makes the most difference.
Yeah, and I'd add to that too, just even in my communications with you, you've been very fast and very, real. I felt it wasn't a kind of, formal approach, but you were just yourself, but very reliable. And I've been stung lately with so many agents so keen, but just, letting me down with, "Oh, I forgot. Oh, sorry, I'm just so busy." And, as a client side person, I can see where real estate perhaps gets a little bit of a reputation, not just in terms of, the under quoting scandal, over quoting, but also I've been told a lot of real estate agents really let people down. They're flaky. And I was really thrilled with that interaction with you. Gave me some confidence that you'd be there, you'd show up. And I mean, there's nothing worse to ruin your day, your week, your month, than having, something you've planned and put a lot of effort to fall through because someone's just busy. And so I think you've got that commitment, and that's also something that agents perhaps don't realize is so important to, the other side, the clients and people like myself, is just showing up when you say you will. Yeah. So thank you for that.
No worries at all. And thank you. It's been a pleasure joining you, Wendy.
Mr. Face of the Firm.
Thank you so much for joining us, Mitch.
From open plan.
And thank you everyone for listening in. Join us again soon for another episode of Meet the Agent Podcast.
I'll sell you my services, I just can't be undersold. And I've got the same